Dragon Quest is one of those series where even if you haven't played a ton of it, you still feel how important it is. Like, this franchise basically helped set the blueprint for JRPGs as we know them. Party-based adventuring, turn-based combat, charming monsters, cozy world vibes. Dragon Quest has been doing that forever. So, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is a modern remake of the original Dragon Quest VII from 2000 on the PlayStation, and it's also kind of a modernized version of Dragon Quest VII Fragments of the Forgotten Past from the 3DS era. And before we go any further, quick disclaimer, this was my first time playing Dragon Quest VII in any form, so this is not going to be a hardcore, here's what changed from the PS1 version comparison. This is more like, if you've never played Dragon Quest VII before, or you're thinking about getting into Dragon Quest, is this a good one to jump into? And honestly, yes, with a few caveats that I'll get into. So let's get into the story. The setup here is actually really cool. You start on this continent called Estard, and you're basically just a kid, a fisherman's child, nothing special. Very small beginnings, and then the game slowly pulls you into this larger mystery that turns into a huge adventure. The big hook with Dragon Quest VII is that it's a time travel, world restoration story, but it's also semi-episodic, and that's the thing I ended up liking the most. The game has you collecting these magical tablets, and when you complete them, you unlock the ability to travel into the past. And each time you go into the past, you basically get dropped onto a new island storyline that's been lost or erased in the past. So it becomes this loop of find tablet pieces, unlock a past location, go there, fix whatever disaster is happening, return to the present, and then see how that place has changed because of what you did. And I love that, because it makes the world feel huge without the game needing to be one continuous open world the entire time. Each island has its own little mini plot with new characters and some weird situations happening because of the Demon King's influence. And some of those situations get wild in a way that's really fun. Like, the game is clearly enjoying the fact that it can do different tones and different premises without committing to just one for 80 hours. And the time travel part is genuinely rewarding. You do something in the past, come back to the present, and suddenly there's a thriving civilization where there was nothing before. People will reference what you did as some legend or old story, and you're like, yeah, that was me. It hits that classic your actions mattered itch. Now, not every episode is a banger per se. Some island stories felt kind of cookie cutter, and a few just didn't click with me. But the nice part is, if you don't love one, you're not trapped in it forever. You move on and the next one could be totally different. So overall on the story, I'd say the structure is awesome. It's a really smart way to do world building and variety. My only big complaint is pacing in some areas, and this is where Dragon Quest VII's reputation is kinda earned. This game is long, and it's not just JRPG long, like long. There was a point where I was like, okay, I'm satisfied, I get it, we've built up to a good endpoint, and then it just kept going. It wasn't horrible, and it wasn't miserable, I still enjoyed my time, but it did hit that feeling of, alright, you could have wrapped this up a little earlier, and I would have been totally fine. So yeah, great structure, great world building, a few weaker episodes, and it runs a bit longer than it needs to. Okay, next up, gameplay time. So if you played Dragon Quest before, this is going to feel extremely familiar. This is classic turn-based combat, party of 4, choose your actions each turn, attack, magic abilities, items, and I know some people hear that and go, oh, so it's basic. And yeah, it kinda is, but it's also like, that's the point. Dragon Quest is comfort food JRPG combat. It's the classic pizza of turn-based systems. It works, it's clean, it's readable, it's satisfying. Where the game starts to get more interesting is the vocation system. Vocations are basically your job/class system. They define what abilities you learn, what your character specializes in, and how you build your party. And Reimagined adds a twist that I actually loved. You can moonlight a vocation, meaning you can have 2 vocations at once. That was huge for me because it let me solve problems in a really natural way. Like, there was a stretch where I was like, man, I'm not getting enough healing. So I adjusted one character to combine something like a priest-style vocation with a more damaged focused one. That gave me healing without turning that character into a pure support bot. And because it's easy to switch vocations, I felt way more comfortable experimenting. I didn't feel like I was going to ruin my build and get punished for 10 hours because I chose the wrong thing. That flexibility really matters. But, and this comes to my biggest complaint, it did feel like vocations opened up a little too late. I was a good chunk into the game before the system really became available, and it's weird because once you have it, it feels like the game's main identity. It's such a big deal, and it's a bummer that the early game keeps you kind of stuck with basic options for so long. And speaking of early game, the first half of the game is way too easy. Like, you can kind of autopilot a lot of the fights. Basic attacks, basic spells, keep moving. I didn't die for most of the game, and even when I did die later, the punishment is super light. You lose a small amount of coins, and it's not the type of game where one mistake basically just deletes your progress. Now, that's not necessarily bad. It's approachable. If you're new to turn-based RPGs, this is going to feel welcoming, not oppressive. But if you're an RPG veteran, you might be like, alright, when does this start pushing back? The good news, the second half gets better. Once your builds open up and enemies start asking more of you, fights become way more engaging. Not brutally difficult, but enough that you're making real decisions. Now, my favorite gameplay addition in Reimagined is the worked up mechanic. Basically, there's a random chance each turn that your character becomes worked up and gets access to a special ability tied to their vocation. And these abilities can be clutch. Team heals, defensive buffs, extra attacks, huge momentum swings, stuff like that. And it adds this fun layer of strategy. You know, do you use it immediately? Do you save it for when you're in trouble? Do you gamble and hope it happens again later? I had one moment where I was basically dead. Last character standing, totally done. And then she got worked up and had a revive ability. I revived the whole team, healed everyone, and turned it into a comeback win. That's the kind of RPG magic moment that makes you sit up in your chair. So overall gameplay, classic Dragon Quest combat. It's much better once vocations open up. Early game is easy and slow, but the second half has enough strategy to stay interesting, especially with these worked up mechanics. One thing I want to call out, because it does matter, is how the game feels to play outside of combat. Dragon Quest VII structure means you're constantly moving between islands and time periods, which keeps things fresh visually and narratively. You're not stuck in one biome for 30 hours. You're constantly seeing new towns, new problems, new vibes. Progression-wise, it's very much that classic RPG energy. You're talking to NPCs, solving local problems, unlocking the next tablet piece, and slowly expanding the scope of the world. It's a very steady drip feed of, okay, what's next, which I found really addictive, especially when the episodic stories were so strong. Now let's talk about the presentation. So how does Reimagined look? Well, it uses a chibi-ish art style, and honestly, it mostly works. The characters are expressive, the environments are colorful, and the overall vibe is very storybook adventure. And the monster designs are obviously iconic. I will never get tired of seeing slimes. And Akira Toriyama's influence on Dragon Quest's creature design is just legendary. There's a charm to it that never really goes away. My one weird hang-up is the protagonist. He looks so young that sometimes it's hard to fully buy into the saving the world vibe. Like, my guy looks like he should be learning how to tie his shoes and then he's out here fighting demons. It's not a deal breaker, but it did take me out of it sometimes. I also really wish there were more customization options you could earn in-game. It's always a little frustrating when the outfits feel tied to pre-orders or DLC, because even a small selection of earnable outfits would have added a lot of personality. But overall, the game looks great. It's vibrant, and I genuinely didn't get tired of stepping into new areas. And in terms of overall feel, Dragon Quest has that cozy, adventurous tone. The sound and music help a lot with that. Even when the pace slows down, the vibe keeps it from feeling miserable. The big caveat is length and pacing. Let's address the elephant in the room. This is a long game. And I don't mean long like Persona, I mean long in the sense that the structure is literally built to keep giving you new episodes and new islands and new problems. If you like that mini story arc format, you're going to be happy. If you hate slow build-ups or you want constant main plot escalation, this might not be the game for you. Because Dragon Quest VII is the type of game that's like, hey, here's a small island problem, you solve it, then it's like, cool, here's another one, and another one, and another one. And I like that, but even I felt like it went slightly longer than it needed by the end. So I think the length is the best deciding factor here. If you want a cozy, classic JRPG journey that lasts forever, perfect. If you want a tighter 35 to 45 hour RPG with fast pacing, this isn't that. So here's where I land. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is a really good entry point if You're new to Dragon Quest, you want a classic turn-based RPG, you like world building, lots of small stories, and you don't mind a long, slow burn adventure. The semi-episodic time travel structure is genuinely awesome when it's firing on all cylinders, and the vocation system, especially with moonlighting, adds a lot of fun party building once it opens up. The worked up mechanic also creates some really memorable moments that made battles way more exciting than I expected. But there are definite downsides. The early game is too easy for too long, vocations open up later than they should, and the game's pacing and length can feel like it overstays its welcome just a little bit. That said, I enjoyed it a lot, and I think if you're even slightly interested, the best advice I can give is try the demo. Because if the tone and pacing work for you in that first chunk, you're probably going to have a great time with the full game. There are too many games out there and not enough time, but if you want a classic, cozy, big adventure JRPG, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is absolutely worth keeping on your radar. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you're a Dragon Quest veteran, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.